So today is my Black Ops 7 review, and overall I want to cover everything. It's been out for a week, so we've had an opportunity to basically play the campaign, multiplayer, zombies, with enough time to actually form an opinion that isn't just it sucks or it's great or glaze it or blind hate. Like, I'm going to actually go through each of the different modes, talk about some pros and cons. There is a little bit of overlap, so we'll probably start with the overlap on some of the pros and cons of the game, and then we'll jump to the individual modes, and I'll probably put timestamps so you can just skip through what you're kind of agreeing with, disagreeing with, that type of stuff. With it coming out immediately after Black Ops 6, there's a feeling that a lot of people that it feels too similar to the previous game. So obviously Black Ops 7 coming out the next year, it ends up creating some issues. Even though there was a bigger difference between MW2 and MW3, it kind of struggled with the same issue of feeling too samey and kind of leading to that DLC conversation that a lot of people have, even though there is a ton of content into the game. And I think that's pretty bad on their end. That's whoever made those decisions probably shouldn't be making those decisions. Even if Treyarch was up to the task and they were able to put out quality content or whatever, it just adds to that fatigue factor, especially when you're asking for $70 for the game every single year. And then on top of that, running your microtransactions out of the store as if you're a free-to-play game. Because if you go to the COD store and you go to Fortnite store, the price is pretty comparable. We recently had the game Arc Raiders comes out for $40, and realistically, they went back to the drawing board and said, you know what, our pricing and our microtransactions are too high. We're a paid game. We should charge a little bit less. And that's what they did. Call of Duty could take a huge W by lowering the cost of their game. Even though it's going to come out annually, it would sell way more copies. It would eliminate some of that DLC hate or whatever the heck it is, because I've noticed this with a lot of games. Based off your price point, you get scrutinized based off of that price point. So even if it was $49.99 or $39.99, that'd be a W. But Activision's Activision, so they're like double dipping, having their cake and eat it too, with the price point and the microtransactions, which they could easily lower the price of microtransactions and refund people that overpaid for specific products that they wanted in the store. So I think those are a couple things. Still a problem. And like I've already mentioned, I think it's pretty ambitious what they set out to do with Black Ops 7. But one of the problems with being so ambitious, you can kind of spread yourself thin, which can create issues, not necessarily at launch or in season 1, but maybe in season 4, which is generally when the game starts to die out. Maybe they are spread too thin and there's maybe not enough content for that part of it. And I think that could be a potential roadblock later on. The obvious issue that's been going around is the AI slop, I guess, with the calling cards. And to my knowledge, it's really only the calling cards and maybe some screens or something like that. I don't think they've done any AI with anything else, but that doesn't matter, right? The end of the day, Call of Duty is way too massive as a company that they couldn't hire someone to just throw out some, even if they were bad, calling cards that were not generated by AI. You could find some artists, boom, pump out some art daily, and you're good to go. The biggest problem with using AI from a company so massive is it just sets that tone that, hey, we're all going to use the AI. Activision's doing it. Call of Duty's doing it. We can do it too. And I think it's bad for gaming industry to do AI that way. And then on top of that, it calls into doubt or question what else is made with AI. And I don't think as a person gaming, you should even ever have to consider that. It should be, okay, the calling cards are made by artists. The voice acting made by artists. The thing with this, maps, modes, whatever you want to go, it's made by people. And just that little bit of doubt with, oh, this is made by AI? Well, maybe this promotional material is made with AI. Maybe this camo is made with AI. Maybe the maps are made with AI. Maybe the, and you can go on, and it just creates bigger issues with the game as a whole. And I think that's kind of a problem. It's just bad for the franchise as well. So that's mostly the overview of the negatives. In terms of the positives, I think shared progression is a huge W. There's several instances where Maybe I wanted to play multiplayer, but I want to level up my guns attachments first. So maybe I go into campaign, go into zombies, I max out my gun or get it high level. Then when I jump into multiplayer, I already got like all the attachments, especially since they made weapon leveling like 25% faster. It's definitely noticeable. You pop a double XP token, it's like instant. You're already level 20 with the gun. You haven't even hardly used it. I think there's tons of progression in the game with because of the crossover. You got calling cards in each of the modes. You got camos, all that type of stuff. And even if you're not really a traditional camo grinder where you're like, oh, let me do my headshots, let me do the specials, let me do the gold, diamond, whatever, they still offer you the weapon prestige option. So if you're like one of those people that you only use like 3 or 4 guns, so you're really never going to use a launcher, you're never going to use a shotgun, you're never going to use a sniper, whatever you're not going to use, you can still engage with the progression system by prestiging the weapon. You get a camo, you prestige it again, you get another camo. And then through that leveling of that weapon, you're going to get like 4 or 5 camos, 6 camos total for that gun. If you use 3 or 4 guns, you got lots of camos that you can use for multiple guns that aren't even the mastery ones. So I think that's a kind of a unique thing there. I'm still not a fan of the prestiging to get an attachment. Luckily, most haven't been particularly good, but that's kind of how that part works. That'll jump us into the campaign, which I played on the first day. We kind of speed ran it with the 4-man, kind of through co-op. We want to get to the end game as quick as possible, see kind of what it was all about. So I was able to get an opportunity to play all of that. And I'm not usually a campaign guy. Normally, I've always been like a multiplayer guy. And then once 2019 hit, I became like a Warzone guy, even though I still am a fan of multiplayer. And even more now, I like zombies a lot too. So I don't usually play the campaigns all that much. And even though I don't think campaigns are all that important, I think for a lot of people they are. They set up the world, like storylines, the general world that everything's going to take place in. And it kind of sets the stage for everything that's going to happen. And it has a huge impact on general sentiment of the game as well as reviews of the game. We've seen with MW3, overall it was a good multiplayer. Zombies started off okay and it lacked a little bit later on, but the review wouldn't have known that. But the campaign was atrocious and it got dinged super hard, even though it was one of the best multiplayer games that we've had in a very long time. This is very much the same. I think the multiplayer in general is good. I think zombies in general is good. Campaign sucks, as we'll get to, but it negatively impacts the review of the game, the sentiment of the game, and the general hate train of the game. And that's on top of all the COD fatigue that happens because the game comes out annually, causing those issues. So it's kind of one of those things that it still has to be good, even if I don't particularly care for it, and I would skip cutscenes if I wasn't in a party, that type of thing. Starting off with the good side of the campaign, which is going to be pretty short and brief, is I personally didn't like the campaign. I don't really like the end game mode all that much. I did tweet about the end game, and some people were like, hey, I actually like it and stuff like that. So maybe it will be the flavor for you, but personally it didn't hit in any meaningful way. I can give them the credit where credit is due in terms of visuals of the campaign, the cutscenes and all that. They look good. I think those things were executed pretty good. I think it's ambitious to do a 4-player co-op campaign and then do missions with bosses and mechanics. And that was super ambitious. But the problem with COD being a 20-year-old franchise is you are damned if you do, damned if you don't. If they would have done kind of the classics, which we'll talk about, it probably would have been like, oh, they just did the same thing they always do. And this time they're doing something different and it misses the mark completely. The reality is at the end of the day, whatever you make, it has to be good. And whatever is good will be like fine, right? You can go outside the box if it's going to be good, but if it's not, it's kind of like you're wasting your time. And I think that creates issues for the studios because they kind of want to be ambitious, but then it's like, well, we kind of got to do a little bit of both, but at the end of the day, it needs to be good. It's too short, which is a problem. So when it comes to the cons, which I have a lot of, even though the positives weren't all that great, we end up going in there. So the cons is basically the campaign is too short. It's uninteresting. The bosses are essentially bullet sponges with some simplistic mechanics, a feeling of like one note, and throughout it always feels kind of like you're doing the same thing or very similar thing, which is not good. And there's not probably a single mission that's going to be iconic in a positive way. Like we have some of the most iconic Call of Duty missions are like Gillied Up, One Shot, One Kill, No Russian, Clean House, Numbers, Mile High Club, and then there's many more. There's so many iconic Call of Duty missions, and usually they have a variety of some kind of stealth mission, a sniper mission, a vehicle mission, like Black Ops 2 had horses and stuff, and there's been other ones with tanks and fighter jet or Harrier or whatever the heck it is in Black Ops 2 as well. There's a ton of these things. There's escape sequence where you're trying to get out and there's a timer. Black Ops 7 like kind of does these, but like half-assed, if that's the way to say it. There's so many elements where somebody's going to comment, oh, they did that, but it's like, not really. And I think they really missed the mark on that, and it creates a lot of issues where it's just not going to be memorable. And that doesn't even account for the technical issues with the campaign. It is labeled a four-player co-op campaign. If you play it solo, you can't pause it. There's no checkpoints. If your game crashes or you have an internet issue, you have to always be online. It'll disconnect you, and you have to start the mission from the beginning. There's some of these challenges where it's like fight this particular boss without getting hit. That's a Dark Ops challenge, for example. So that means every time you want to try that, you have to go through the entire mission, get to the boss. If you get hit once, that's it, right? So there's not a checkpoint system, which is pretty bad. If you do play solo, it's not like even like you have AI teammates that are dialoguing and doing stuff with you. No, you're out there by yourself. So I feel like they really missed the mark in that area, and it just doesn't feel right at all. I don't know what they were thinking. It's like they go, oh, well, we really want to do this end game thing, but we got to slap together a campaign before that. And that's what it feels like, and it's pretty bad. As far as the end game, it has a feeling of being completely unfinished. Relatively little to do outside of killing the one big boss on the map and getting your fear skins for your operators, which is basic cosmetic and doing camos. Outside of that, I don't really see much to do. It lacks a ton of depth. There's no replay value. The connectivity in general is bad. It's laggy, desyncy, all kinds of those things where it just does not feel right. You're on high latency. Maybe that'll be solved because they're removing the requirement to complete the campaign, so more players will be able to participate in the end game. Maybe that'll have better servers, but I feel like it's had a ton of issues and bugs. They did patch some stability stuff, but I don't think it's enough. It still feels pretty bad to play. I think there's some bad decisions where once you reach certain level milestones, it'll spawn you on specific areas of the map that aren't particularly ideal. And you kind of have to cross the entire map. And it's cool, you got the gliding wingsuit, grapple hook, that helps with the mobility, but there's just not nearly enough of the redeploy drones so that you can get around the map quicker. They're not high enough. There's so much stuff related to that. The AI isn't particularly intelligent or engaging or interesting in any meaningful way. They don't offer a particular challenge unless you're considerably under-leveled or you're just playing stupid. And realistically, I think the mode should have dropped with the beta tag the same way DMZ did, because DMZ was, even though I wasn't the biggest fan of DMZ, I wanted it to be good. It just never came out the other side as a good product. It launched with more missions. It launched with more content, more stuff to do. And overall offered a better experience than what the end game provides. I think if this was an alpha or beta, then my expectations were like, all right, cool. They're setting the foundation and then they're going to move forward with it. And then hopefully by the time season 3 hits, we'll have a crazy good product on the end game. But what they've delivered does not give me any faith in the product that it'll be that. And I feel like they hoodwinked the community on this one, because when we got a chance to go visit the studio earlier, every promotional product, everything sounded like you're going to get the campaign, which should be a traditional length of Call of Duty campaign. And then when you go to the end game, it'll be a pretty lengthy thing with tons to do, cutscenes, push the narrative, the story, and all that basically didn't happen. So I don't know what the heck happened with that. Maybe they didn't have enough time to finish that or whatever. It didn't end up being where it needs to be. Maybe at the end of the year, it'll be somewhere. But as of right now, I don't think the campaign content is worth engaging with. Now, let's get into multiplayer. So starting off with the negatives, multiplayer is that there's kind of like a very finite meta right now. It's just not diverse enough. I think most people are using a handful of weapons, which generally happens within COD, but it does feel particularly bad in this because of the way the SMGs are balanced, the aim assist changes, which I think are good, are impacting that. Some of the recoil on some of the guns don't feel particularly balanced compared to some of the others. So it's kind of like forcing people into a more strict meta, which I think is pretty bad, but that's solvable. The meta weapons being like level 1 unlocks, like you basically get them off default, is also contributing to that. So I wouldn't necessarily say raise the level on requirements for those, but make it so that other options are more varied and interesting, because right now it's not particularly interesting. I think with the new game, the spawns are a little bit wonky. That's fine. I think if you play very specific modes, it ends up being less wonky. I think Hardpoint struggles a lot. Domination's a little bit better, but the Domination's always been a little bit better, especially in the beta and early access. Domination typically feels fine. In terms of the movement, I think a lot of people will feel like it's not enough to differentiate itself. I do like Omni movement. I like the wall jump. I like the wall bounce. But for a lot of people that bought BO6, I feel like there's going to be a lot of people that struggle to really notice the difference. When you play, it's definitely a definite difference on how Black Ops 7 plays versus BO6. But the reality is that some people feel like I paid $70 and it was like the rough draft, and now they're putting out the final draft and I had to pay $70 for that, and now I got to pay $70 for this. That's $140, and realistically I'm only going to be on Black Ops 7, which is the better product. So I think there's a little bit of issues with that, but that's an overarching thing as well. I'm just double downing on it in the multiplayer section. And this is more nitpicky stuff for multiplayer, because overall multiplayer is pretty solid in my opinion. The aim assist nerf, I think, is a good thing. I think aim assist tuning has been an adjustment. I think I had to dial in my sensitivity a little bit more, my ADS slowdown, my response curve, kind of experimenting more to get it dialed in where I could feel like I can still aim accurately, where I'm actually aiming accurately. It feels like there's a little bit more engagement there and not letting aim assist take the wheel and get you on target. I think the less restrictive engagement optimized matchmaking SBMM has been insanely refreshing. There's been so many instances where it just feels like sometimes you're sweating, sometimes you're not. And it really goes to what I've always wanted, which is kind of get closer to that previous Call of Duty. Not necessarily where every match is easy, like what people have been doing with 2-boxing for the past few years, but more so that you get those ebbs and flows, a different amount that you need to focus up and lock in. And this gets even better with persistent lobbies where maybe you talk trash. I had this happen yesterday. I posted over on Twitter, and it was one of those things where I was talking trash, the guy was talking trash, he was on the bottom of the scoreboard on my team, and basically said, he said 1v1 me, and he ended up on the other team, and then he ended up quitting, dashboarding. A session joined him, he says power goes out. It's like, bro, like, we did not have this before. Persistent lobbies are so goated for the trash talk, and getting multiple lobbies going, and I'm sure some of you guys have multiple of these experiences in the comments that we have not had since MW 2019 when that was taken away. So it's basically a revival of that if you're into that. Especially in free-for-all, get the whole yapping going, and then the whole, there's so much of that, which is, I think, is a huge part of the core COD element, where the comms don't cut off the second the scoreboard's shown in on the map. So I'm really a fan of that. Even though the spawns are less than ideal for some of the maps, I think the map pool in general is pretty good. I think they did the right amount of nostalgia with 3 returning maps, and then Nuketown that just dropped, and then we have the other new maps, and the new maps feel pretty good for the most part. I think most of the time when COD comes out with launch maps, usually like 2 good ones, and then the rest are trash. And right now it doesn't feel like, maybe 1 is trash, 2 are trash, but then the vast majority are either good or okay, and that's better than most of the time we've had for launch maps in a very, very long time. And the maps do have a varied size. I would say that some maybe lean a little bit too big in some scenarios where maybe they benefit from an 8v8, but that's something they'll figure out and tune as time goes on, and they'll add more modes and that type of thing. And like I said, even though the movement is a little bit more controversial of a thing, I've liked the Omni movement since it was introduced. I like the wall jumping. realistically, you're only going to have this type of movement if you're going to go to the next COD. It's not going to have this stuff. It's going to be Modern Warfare title, Modern Warfare 4. That's already known. And it's kind of one of those things that if you enjoy it, enjoy it for this year, because it's going to go back to boots on the ground, whatever, military, realistic shooter next year. And it's kind of one of those things. And although not a lot of people are talking about this part, I feel like the anti-cheat has actually managed to do something. I know in the beta, I only saw a few clips on the first day, and then it seemed like it kind of died out. Not to say that there are zero cheaters, because that just isn't a realistic probability. And now that the launch has come out, I think I saw 2 clips on launch day, and then since then I haven't seen a bunch of people running into cheaters. Although I'm sure if you scour and look for it, you'll definitely find it. And personally, I have not ran into one. So I think that's a good step in the right direction. Hopefully when season 1 hits, Warzone will also receive the benefits of this updated anti-cheat. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. But early impressions, it's doing okay. Now to zombies. So zombies, I don't have a ton of negatives. And I feel like the negatives aren't even necessarily 100% mine. I feel like there's a lot of people that feel it's too similar to Black Ops 6. I was a fan of Black Ops 6, the zombies. But the fact that it is so similar, it does give that feeling like it's a DLC. I know one person that really talks about this specific aspect a lot is Milo, or Mr. Raffle Waffles. In particular, that going from one game to the next, a lot of the systems get overhauled and were overhauled for years when it came to Call of Duty. So it made it feel like when you load it up, like 95% of the HUD and the gameplay is different from the previous iteration. And the problem this time around is that it is like 95% the same. So it definitely does add to the conversation of DLC, even though I liked Black Ops 6's iteration of zombies, regardless of the plates and all this other stuff. I like the system with the augments, and I did like Cold War system pretty good. MWZ, but overall, that is a big concern. Another concern, that this is one that I won't necessarily have a problem with, but I think people who play it will, is that the augment system got enhanced this year. They added more augments to boost up your perks, field upgrades, basically everything that you equip. And the downside is that they take a very long time. And I think they're such a core part of the game that, of course, you should be earning them and unlocking them so you get a sense of power progression. But realistically, they take way too long. And some of the best ones may even be necessary, especially for how difficult some of the content may be and how difficult the boss fight has been for a lot of players to not have these augments upgraded to make your character feel stronger. But beyond that, I'm a modern zombies enjoyer, so I think they crushed it, but we'll get into the positives. So I think the launch map is been pretty good. I think it is fairly big, almost too big. But once you start using the launch pads, it doesn't feel as crazy. You can kind of get from place to place. The vehicle is cool. The Wonder Weapon is cool. I guess the Wonder Vehicle, not necessarily just vehicle. I think it enhanced the formula of transit. Instead of just getting on the bus and riding it, you get a little bit more autonomy in how you want to navigate and move around the map, which I think is a huge plus. I think that improved on transit. Also has the option to play a more simplified experience. If you want to go into survival, stick to one POI. They're going to expand on these with DLCs, so you get access to other POIs and eventually new maps. And they also have the Dead Ops Arcade, which is like the top down, or you can go first person, and it's completely different. It feels nothing like the normal zombies, and it gives you a completely different experience, which I'm sure people are having fun with that as well. I haven't really played that, but overall, I think there's tons of content there. And if you are a fan of engaging with the Easter egg content, there's quite a bit to do when it comes to Ashes of the Dam. This is one of the longest quest lines I think we've had in a very long time. And then once you beat the boss and complete the content, you get access to the Cursed Relic system, which adds a whole new layer of depth. And I think as of the recording of this video, they've already gotten 8 of the 9 relics to add these debuffs, make the game more punishing, more challenging. And this is specifically for people that want to go above and beyond and get that additional challenge and experiment with stuff and get gold armor plates and get Pack-a-Punch 4 and get a super ultra rarity above legendary. And it's one of those things that it just provides additional content and additional layers. So no matter where you're at on your skill level or engagement in the content, you can choose to engage with what you want, and there's something for everyone. And I think one of the best things that COD does is zombies. Even if it's a mediocre zombies, this one's great, but even if it was a mediocre one, the biggest thing about it is that COD literally never gets any competition in this category. We could talk about multiplayer having different options with Arc Raiders, Battlefield, and about a dozen other games. When it comes to zombies, there is no competitor to Call of Duty Zombies. It offers a unique experience, and there's plenty of people that are like, dude, I'm sorry you hate the campaign. I'm sorry you don't like multiplayer and you think it's sweaty, but I love zombies and I'm playing zombies and I'm buying zombies. That's what Call of Duty has. It really has no competitor in the space, and they've dominated the zombie space for a very long time, so much so that they can almost offer it as its own independent game and you know, have it set up that way. But that's just an aside. And then with season 1, they're going to offer new maps. We're going to get the directed mode, and we're going to have a new Easter egg quest, and the curse stuff carries up. There's so much to do in zombies. It's actually kind of crazy. And on top of all the other progression stuff. So I'm really a fan of where it's at. We'll see kind of where it takes it. And now we're like at the overall conclusion, right? I think in today's day and age and what Call of Duty offers, especially going back to back, it's really hard to justify a $70 purchase. I know I'll get my money's worth because I played through the campaign already. I already got the Zombies Mastery camo, and I'm working through the multiplayer side of it, and I have a lot of fun with the game. I like the multiplayer as is. I think the reduced SBMM, a W. I will get my money's worth. I would generally wait until after season 1 if you're on the fence. Maybe wait till it goes on sale. Usually a COD goes on sale Black Friday coming up next week. And there's a lot of those types of things where maybe you get it on a discounted price. Maybe you do Game Pass and just do the PC version, the lower one, so you get access to the game. Whatever it is kind of hard to justify a $70 price when they asked for it last year, the year before, and the last 20 years. So I get that part of it. But if you know you're going to play everything, then it's kind of easy to rationalize that $70 is worth your time, even though there are lots of games that fall into that bracket, whether it's Battlefield or, like I've mentioned multiple times, Arc Raiders. I think if we took the game and rated it without the campaign, it'd probably be an 8.5 or a 9 out of 10, my personal experience. But I think the campaign is actually that detrimental to the score in so many ways that I listed that it probably lands around a 7. And if it was executed well, like I said, this could be one of the best Call of Duty titles of all time. I know that sounds crazy, but what they brought to the table this year, it's unfortunate that COD fatigue has set in and all these other variables, and you know, it is what it is. But overall, you got to kind of do with it what you will. I've given you enough information to make the decision. If you enjoyed the video, found it helpful, hit the like button. If you want to find your way back, subscribe with notifications on. We'll see you on the next one. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.